The Ringer's Austin Gayle joins the show, and we're ranking the most disappointing players in the NFL in 2024. Let's get it.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day, and a special shout out to the everydayers for making us your first listen every day. Don't forget, it's a lot of everydays. Don't forget to subscribe, follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And I, of course, am your host, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst for The Messenger. And today's podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free on linkedinjobs.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedinjobs.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As I said, we're ranking the most disappointing players. Players we had high hopes for, high expectations, but have so far not lived up to those expectations and may not live up to them in the future. So let's get into AG and that interview. All right, AG, we always trend. I always do positive when you're not on the show, and then we trend negative when you get on the show because it's more fun to hate on people when you're around, not just on my own. I sound like an idiot or I sound like a hardo just hating on by myself. But if we're discussing it, it doesn't sound nearly as bad. So kick off your top 3 most disappointing players here so far this season. And I made the rule no quarterbacks because those are too easy. And no rookies, because obviously rookies always disappoint.
I also, in addition, I added another rule where I try to stay away from players that have been like extensively hurt, just because I feel like obviously those are disappointing. You know, when you said no quarterbacks, it was a good call because like I feel like Deshaun Watson has been obviously super disappointing for the injuries, and I know he's been injured as well, but even just how he's played. But then Daniel Jones,
well, I'm not disappointed,
injury, but even before that, so I went with my first one. Second-year wideout, Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. Ooh. This year, I know he's been banged up. He played in weeks 1 through 3, and then he played in week 8 and in week 9. But in those 5 games, he has 8 catches for 122 yards. And when I turn on the tape with Treylon Burks, it's hard to see, even if he can stay healthy, it's hard to see him being the number 1 wide receiver they essentially traded for him to be, right? Like they traded away A.J. Brown and acquired the draft capital to go get Treylon Burks for him to be an A.J. Brown type of receiver. He's similar size. I think they like his explosive ability, but he's not A.J. Brown. I don't think he ever will be A.J. Brown. I don't even know if he's going to be a player that's necessarily capable of being
Corey Davis,
legitimate,
right?
like a legitimate number 2 wideout. I think that the route tree is limited with him. Obviously can't stay healthy. I don't like what he's able to do at the catch point. I don't like what he's able to do in terms of yards after the catch ability. Even like he was so much better at Arkansas, more exclusively playing in the slot. And when I remember talking to Sam Pittman, the Arkansas head coach, it's like when we had press coverage, we threw him a go. And when he wasn't in press coverage, we threw him a slant. That's pretty much it. And like I feel like that limitation is where he has to be in the league, which is so hard to plot for in an offense, given the draft capital they gave him. So him in his second year, 1, not being able to stay healthy, and 2, not being a focal point of this offense, even when he is healthy, I think he's got to be one of the more disappointing players this year.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly high on Burks, so I didn't have particularly high expectations. But like he did go to a spot that should have been like if there was any place that should have been with like the route to the Tennessee runs, it should have been there that he could excel. And even on, had multiple chances to make plays on deep balls from Levis a few weeks ago in his very first start and didn't come down with any of them. And they were like all balls that if you swap him for A.J. Brown, you would be surprised if A.J. Brown didn't come down with them, right? Like he would have come down with those. So sadly, I have another second-year wide receiver as mine, and it's Skyy Moore. Now, I had
that's a good one
over Burks coming out. Truthfully, at this point, I don't think it matters. Both look like they're not going to be starting caliber NFL wide receivers. Now, Moore, maybe a little bit more sort of potential in that, he wasn't a wide receiver in high school. He only switched to wide receivers freshman year at Western Michigan. And so still relatively new. It was a 3-year, only played 3 years of college, was still young coming out, still just turned 23 years old. So like maybe there's potential there. And you do see him probably separate better on certain routes than Treylon Burks does. Like he can still get off the line of scrimmage, still run slants and stuff like that. But just not a physical route runner. Unfortunately, gets pushed around too much. And when guys get their hands on him, he just can't get it off. And then he's just not an outside type of wide receiver. Like when he does not stack well on the outside when he runs pure go routes, and he can't get open on hitches. Like he does not run a good stop hitch, any sort of route that has that element to it. 0.95 yards per out, 201 yards in the season. He's getting phased out, dude. Last game, he only played 15 snaps against Miami. So it was a starter at the beginning of the year. Guy that thought there was going to be the number one, and now isn't even like seeing the field.
I was a big fan of Skyy Moore coming out. I think both of us were. It's been concerning that he's had obviously he hasn't had the injuries that Treylon Burks has had, but he's had as much, if not more, opportunity in that Chiefs offense in terms of to like steal snaps away, to run more routes, to see more targets, and just hasn't lived up to the billing. Like Justin Watson is a more prolific threat in that offense than Skyy Moore, and that's a problem. Both those receivers super disappointing. And one thing to add on the Treylon Burks stuff, like you remember how upset Vrabel was when that AJ Brown trade went down, and like it didn't even make sense for the capital they gave up, but it also didn't even make sense for the decision not to pay him, because paying him was in their window. Like they're trying to be competitive now. It wasn't a team that was tanking or looking to be less competitive. It was a team that needed to be more competitive in order to break, get over the hump and push themselves deep into AFC playoff contention. So the AJ Brown trade will go down. And remember, John Robinson got fired halfway through the season last year after AJ Brown and the Eagles lit them up.
After the Eagles game.
They know how bad that move was for this team. And to get Treylon Burks, it's unfair expectations for Treylon Burks, but that's the situation they're in.
We'll get back to AG in just a second, but these days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you have to do, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs help you find quality candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedinjobs.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This pod is also brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I know I may be picking the Bengals with the news that Trey Hendrickson's playing on Thursday night. We shall see, though. Maybe a SGP is in the works. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Yeah, dude. All right, who's your number two?
I got Evan Neal, offensive tackle for the New York.
That was my
Giants.
number two also.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, he has been – I tweeted it out today, but, man, he is among second-year tackles this year. He has the worst pressure rate allowed by almost 3%. He's allowed 12% he's allowed on 12% of his pass protection snaps. He's allowed pressure. Whereas guys like Bernard Raymond, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, who was a 7th-round pick for the Green Bay Packers, has played better from a pressure rate allowed perspective this year. I just don't think he has it at tackle. He might be a player who has to get kicked into guard. And at that point, he's so tall that he'd be an even awkward body type to play guard. I don't know. Like, I thought him coming out, he was one of the more high floor prospects. I know a lot of people loved his build. A lot of people loved his size. Someone that you could had production at Alabama against SEC competition that you loved, but he has not panned out for the Giants. And we've said this before about young offensive tackles in New York, right? Andrew Thomas's first year, people are like, I don't see it. He's not there. And he's blossomed to one of the better tackles in the league. But this is Evan Neal's second year. And it isn't just bad. It's like worse than it was last year. So I don't know. With offensive tackle development, I think there's always this chance for it to turn around in their third or fourth year. That's usually what the developmental curve is. But I'd be super disappointed given the draft capital they gave up for him, in the season he's had thus far.
No, there's really no sugarcoating it. He's been awful, right? Like not improving, getting worse, chirping the fans. Like it's been a trifecta of just what you don't want to see from a developmental standpoint for a second-year offensive tackle. And with him, so I had him and Icky Ekwonu because I think Icky Ekwonu has been super disappointing as well. But with Neal, like kicking him inside, I'm not sure fixes his issues. I just think he has bad balance and gets top heavy. Like he is a weird build. Like he's an oddly cut offensive lineman that I don't like. He doesn't look like a guard. Whereas Ekwonu, I think has a kind of flexibility. Like his problems are manipulating space and timing up his hands with speed on the outside. I think on the interior, he can, like, once he gets his hands on guys, if he has like a quick window, he can still win reps and be dominant. I just don't see that with Neal, though. I don't see it and see the high end reps with Evan Neal. But I do think Ekwonu, he's not a tackle at this point. I think if you're the Carolina Panthers, next year your plan is Icky's kicking inside the guard, and we need to go find a left tackle in the future. So,
on that tweet I sent out, Icky Ekwonu only 6% pressure allowed, which is third best of any second-year tackle, but 6 of those pressures are sacks. Like when he loses bad, and he's been giving up sacks, and that's why the stats, maybe like the advanced stats of like pressure rate allowed or whatever it is, maybe don't paint the full picture on just how poorly he's performed at tackle. Better pass rushers, specifically speed rushers, has to beat that dude up in both the years he's been in the league. I do think that putting him back in that, not back in that phone booth, but putting him in a phone booth to play guard probably not saves his career, but has him play a lot longer than he is at tackle. I remember when he was coming out of NC State, a lot of people said, is he a guard or is he a tackle? I think it always made sense to try him at tackle and give him an opportunity at tackle, given the athletic ability and the success he had at NC State. But it's not, you're right in that it's not as bad as the situation we had with Evan Neal, because you're maybe kicking Neal in the guard with the build and the size that he has. Maybe that doesn't make sense either.
And with the other thing with Ekwonu, 9 penalties this year, 13 as a rookie. That's a bad chance. You can't have guys committing that many penalties along your offensive line. All right, who's your top one here?
I have Jase Jackson. Jase Jackson has been an embarrassment since he signed that monster contract with the Los Angeles Chargers. And I know that was 2 years ago, and he was very bad last year, one of PFF's lowest graded corners in the NFL last year, playing over, I think, a little over 200 snaps in the Chargers last year. But this year, healthy, supposedly, plays the first 2 weeks of the season, doesn't play well, ends up getting hurt, ends up getting moved to the New England Patriots, back to the New England Patriots where he had that good start to his career, and he's graded out even worse with the New England Patriots. Like, he's completely fallen off a cliff. Like, I don't know. I can't remember a corner that had the success that he had through the first 4 years of his career. It wasn't like 1 year. The first 4 years of his career, he was not, I wouldn't say dominant, but a very good starting outside corner, the New England Patriots. Not just to suck with his next team, but then go back to the Patriots and still not be able to perform. Like, he has been a disappointment. Might be an understatement for him, because I don't know how it goes forward with Jase Jackson. I don't know necessarily if he's someone that can be leaned on it for anybody. I don't know. Like, do you continue to try it with him? It's an awkward thing with Jase Jackson. Like, I know I highlighted second-year players at 3 and 2. I debated Kayvon Thibodeau here because he has not built on his rookie season. He's been one of the lower-ranked pass-rushing players this year. But Jase Jackson, long into his career now, and I don't know if there's a righting of the ship for him.
Honestly, I should have had him in the top 3 because it has to be. He has to be. So, like, usually when you talk about worst free agency signings of all time, like Albert Haynesworth's the one that comes to mind. But even Albert Haynesworth wasn't a liability. He wasn't an impact player anymore after he signed with – who was it that he signed with in free agency?
Washington. Tennessee.
It was Washington. It was Washington. He started Tennessee, going to Washington. There you go. Just nailed it in.
The first like $100 million contract. I remember like on Twitter, it's like $100 million for Albert Haynesworth. Like, I remember like, oh my God, that's insane. We're giving out $100 million contracts now.
But Jase Jackson might be the worst free agent signing of all time because he got top dollar for cornerbacks and was unplayable. They couldn't play him. He was costing games. And still is. Quite literally still is. So, yeah, that's a good one. My number one, though.
Wait, before you move off so quickly, worst free agent signing of all time, can I give you another sprinkle of one?
Yeah. Who?
Javon Walker. going to the
jaywalk, dude.
The Oakland Raiders,
I
signing that
love
monster
jaywalk.
contract. He signed that monster contract with the Raiders the 2008 offseason. The next year had 15 catches for 196 yards. The next year didn't have a freaking catch in 3 games and was gone.
I want to say he had one good year after he left, though, right? One good year somewhere.
Not with the Raiders. Not with the Raiders.
Oh, okay. It was with the Raiders. He had a good year with Denver after he left Green Bay.
Yeah.
And then he signed a big deal with the Raiders after.
Signed a monster deal with the Raiders, and I remember my dad wanted him dead. My dad wanted Javon Walker dead. It was like right when my dad was starting to understand what free agency was, because I was like talking about like, oh, we added this guy, we paid him all this money, like that's going to solve some of our receiver problems. And that's coming out when the Raiders like then were like trying to right the ship. They're trying to figure their shit out because they just went. It was a bad news, but they gave him this monster deal, and he was just legitimately awful for the team and hurt all the time. It was just terrible.
Dude, and he is the one who had the game against them. Brett Favre's dad dying Monday Night Football. He went off in that game.
Oh, wow. That was
him against the Raiders. Remember that was like where Favre just like buried him. It was Jaywalk went for like 180 and like 3 touchdowns in that game. I love
that game too, because it's hard to be like, screw this game because it's cool because Brett Favre's dad dying, whatever. But like Monday Night Football, the Raiders just getting undressed, and everyone talks about it as like the coolest thing ever, like the best story. It's the same clips every time, them getting toasted, and but you're like, as a Raiders fan, you're like, damn, I don't like this story. I don't think it's good. No, the contract was a 6-year, $55 million contract back then. 6-year, $55 million. He had 15 catches in a Raiders uniform. That's insane. That's insane. 15 catches in a Raiders uniform. Oh my God, I was so pissed. My dad was pissed. Everyone was pissed. People bought jerseys.
You had a jersey. I had a Jaywalk sweatshirt back in the day. It was like Jaywalk. Yeah. He had his own brand in like Green Bay. They were at like Boston store up there.
I mean, the guy knew how to secure a bag. I'll tell you that right now. He knew how to get a bag because that was disgusting.
Then he was involved in that shooting, right? In Vegas? Or
I don't
was
know.
In the car when the guy got shot? Darren Williams. So it's tough stuff. All right. My top one is I had a number of different guys, but Jameson Williams this year has been poop, dude. Yeah. Lions second-year wide receiver. He's dropped 5 of his 13 catchable passes.
I'm so glad you brought him up.
83 routes in 5 games. They don't even want to play him. Now, when they do play him, they use them in like the routes that he should be running. Like he's running deep overs. He's running deep crossers. He's running deep posts. He's like trying to utilize the speed. But and like there's some plays that could have hit. I still think he is fast, but the suddenness, it doesn't look like it was at Alabama before the ACL, right? Like he just doesn't have that twitch at the line of scrimmage. Straight line speed's still good, can still run by guys. And then just like the attention to detail. I do worry that he's kind of one of those guys who maybe lost confidence and you're never going to get it back type of guy. Like who's just not going to, going to go through adversity and not going to do whatever it takes to get back in the good graces of the Lions staff. He's going to, complain about not getting touches instead of actually like rise to the occasion. I do worry about that possibly being the case with him.
What's crazy is that you know exactly why it's going down, because I don't know if you saw the initial picture where he melted nacho cheese on top of a vat of hot Cheetos on a paper plate. And that was one of his lunches. And then he's just
no attention to detail.
Yeah, literally recently just put like a half an Oreo McFlurry inside of a double cheeseburger from McDonald's. Like, and I'm not one to hate. No, I am. I hate on people and how they eat sometimes because I think that you could be a little bit ridiculous. My least favorite thing, though, is a picky eater. This guy's not a picky eater. This guy's just eating legitimate garbage. Like, and I know that receivers, specifically Chad Ochocinco, is famously like eat McDonald's every day as his like pregame meal. I know Chris Olave, before he went into the league, was like a big fast food guy, but he talked a lot about how like getting his diet right has made leaps and bounds for his like ability to impact the football field. You can get away with the cheeseburger, Oreo McFlurry, hot Cheetos, nacho cheese combo when you're like 19, 20 and you're just physically gifted as all hell. That just starts to catch up with you, man. I don't know. Like the food decisions with J-Mo, I think, are the biggest things that need to change. That and the betting. Like the decision-making off the field is not panning out. You can't be betting on games and you can't be eating Oreo McFlurry fucking double doubles. Oh, I swear. I'm sorry. But like, I mean, come on. I'm sorry. You can't do it. This is a league where like you need to, your inputs, like what you're doing off the field, what you're eating, who you're betting on, and what you're not betting on, they matter. They're showing up now. And I feel like that would be the biggest change. It's like, dude, get this guy on a diet plan. I feel like he might be thriving.
I 100% agree. And it's not every, like if a guy is him and he wants to eat McDonald's, sure. If you're a good player,
Yeah.
established player, and you want to put garbage in your body, by all means. But as soon as you have all the stuff that's following now, Jameson Williams, as soon as you have kind of the start to the career that he had, and you don't see that as a wake-up call, you're a top 12 pick at wide receiver, and you're not even starting. They're trading for Donovan Peoples-Jones to play more snaps than you. Like, and that's not a wake-up call to you that I have to, like, have a little more attention to detail here. I don't think it's ever going to turn on then.
He has nine catches in his career. Yeah. He's been suspended for betting. There needs to be a lifestyle change. And I think that starts with the Oregon McFlurry on the McDouble. Because that is a byproduct of a lot of because if that's what he's putting on IG, we don't know what this dude's eating another time.
There's hot Cheetos at 1 a.m. 100%.
If you want to be perfect, if you like in the NFL, I believe you have to be perfect in a lot of ways, unless you're just different, built completely different. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have to start changing these inputs, JMO. I bet you that guy finds a salad and stops putting the McFlurries down. I think he's gonna see something change. I think we could see something change because this is getting to a point now where it's like a flat out bust. Like he's like flat
John
out
Ross.
Like,
John Ross.
Yeah, exactly. He's making decisions off the field that are preventing him from even being like a backup. I don't know. Like it could be a bad. It's rough. It's rough right now.
Yeah. Get back to AG in just one moment here. But first, PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. They also offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. I had some other guys written down because I focused actually all on like second-year players, but Calvin Ridley I think has been pretty disappointing.
It's been weird.
Yeah, he just hasn't quite been. He just doesn't look like the same guy, and definitely is not what they want him to be and how they're utilizing him. Jack Jones has to be disappointing. Talk about fast food, man loves some Panda Express.
He's gonna right the ship in Las Vegas, though. He's reuniting with Antonio Pierce. I think Josh McDaniels is someone I wrote down as someone who was pretty disappointing. Good thing he's out the building. What's been your opinion? I've been meaning to ask you this since we got on. Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
He's probably doing a lot behind the scenes that I don't know about. But what I'm seeing front facing, the decisions he's making just to like generate positive vibes in the locker room, I feel like we need to write some of these down because he might just be doing the little things that every head coach needs to do. Installed the mini hoop, some locker room wrestling matches. After wins, players don't come in until Wednesday, which has always been something that players have craved. Every play, anytime you see a coach say, "We'll see you Wednesday," good head coach. He's now given a Raider of the Week parking spot to the player that performs the best the previous week. Bobby Spillane got it the previous week. Victory cigars in the locker room. Born and raised in Oakland, he's born a Raider, die a Raider. These little things, and everyone wants to talk about Mike McDaniel and the Kyle Shanahan's and the Brian Johnsons, all these guys that are just changing the game. Antonio Pierce might be getting back to basics. He's like, dude, we just need the vibes to be good around here, play some football, and make some plays. I don't know. Has Antonio Pierce figured something out that we should have been thinking about way longer?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is something to a new way of head coach and the old way of just being dated in terms of like these guys, and more because there's so much money on the line for these guys that like they're self-motivated. You're like, you can't motivate some of these guys via, cracking the whip anymore. Like if the possibility of $20 million doesn't get you going, right? Like if that doesn't get you teamed up to play every single week, you're not going to have it, right? Some Josh McDaniel screaming in your face isn't going to do it either. So I do think over the past, 10, 15 years, there definitely has been a culture shift in NFL locker rooms in terms of like what motivates guys. And I do think that like you have to build a team or build your culture around positivity and like getting people in a good mood, getting people excited to show up as opposed to treating it as like a job and work, do your job, do what I say, that sort of thing. It just, I think that falls on deaf ears nowadays.
I do think that the do your job piece of the Patriot way it had established, and I think rightfully established, like a level of professionalism the NFL requires that the college game does not, right? In that showing up on time and treating this like a job is super, super important. It's respectful to your coworkers, being the teammates that you have, and putting them in a position to succeed by doing your job. There's a lot of that I actually respect and I think has to be in there. Like you can't, it's not all mini hoops and cigars. Like it is a job that we have to kind of show up for. But the piece of the Patriot way that I think other coaches have failed, the Belichick tree has failed to like recognize in addition to that is you cannot be an asshole and expect that everything's going to be good. Like you're bringing the Patriot way, but you're also just rude and mean to adult men. It just never works. It doesn't work unless you're winning. And everyone says, well, if you're winning, blah, blah, blah. It's like winning solves everything. How do you get there when you aren't winning? And that's where you've seen guys like Dan Campbell, I think, do a lot of those, do a lot of the right things from a culture perspective. And that like players want to play for him. Players want to win for him. Players want him to be a part of the conversation. Players feel like he's positively impacting the culture and the direction of the team. And that, I think Antonio Pierce is closer to Dan Campbell than obviously a Kyle Shanahan, a Mike McDaniel, a Matt LaFleur, guys that are like trying to impact the game by putting players in legitimately a position to succeed with alignment and assignment. Antonio Pierce is like, we're just going to have you guys in the headspace to go out there, ball out, play your best, let's win. I don't know. I do think that, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about like this next head coaching cycle. And like, does it make sense there's two routes, right? You go try and get the mastermind coordinator, whether that's a Mike McDonald on the defensive side, Lou Anarumo on the defensive side, or maybe you're looking at Shane Waldron. I like what he's doing in Seattle, or Brian Johnson and what he's doing, or Ben Johnson, with the Lions. The other piece of this too is if you can't get one of those guys, go get a guy that like players want to play for, right? That's what Dan Campbell is. That's what I think Antonio Pierce is. Go get a guy that isn't going to completely ruin what any culture that you maybe are already building. And that brings me to, I wrote this person down. It wasn't a disappointing player. I know I said Josh McDaniels as a joke, but like I honestly feel Brian Daboll has been disappointing this year. I feel like it's specifically the things that you see publicly on the sideline with how he's treating some of the players. Like I do think that holding players accountable, keeping players accountable is something that he did a really good job of in the first year, right? Talking to Daniel Jones straight after that like really bad pick in week 1 and showing that he's got faith in the players and the inputs and all that kind of stuff. But I do think a lot of his frustration has been reactionary this season, and you've seen that kind of bear out in terms of not having a positive effect on what the players are doing, all that kind of stuff. I don't know what your opinion of Daboll has been this year.
Yeah, I think a better way to say what I was trying to say earlier is that I think players these days are less likely to fall in line with authority just because they're authority figures. Like they're not, you need to see, the coaches need to walk the walk themselves. They have to have whatever that is behind them. And, whatever Dan Campbell has behind him, whatever Antonio Pierce, the personality, the drive, the want to, like, you know it when you see it, right? Like it was something that when I interviewed Luke Fickell, I was like, okay, that's what that looks like. Some guys just have it, and not just the guys who are faking it, the guys who are, ruling with an iron fist just because that's what they were taught to do when it's, just doesn't fit them. So I think that may be the bigger thing. What'd you ask me about?
Before we go, the only thing I got left for you, and I know we're running out of time. I don't know if you've already talked about this on the pod, but give me your takes on the Ken Dorsey stuff.
See, I don't think it's that big of a deal because I always thought it was behind the scenes personality, whatever. It was that's what Sean McDermott came out and said, was that he wants a culture on the offense that's different. It's not play calling. It's the locker rooms are fluid units, right? And a guy that can command that, and a guy that has like the respect of the locker room that everyone can fall in line behind and like actually go to war with. It probably sounds like from what's being reported that was not Ken Dorsey, and so I don't think it's it's the ironic thing is that Joe Brady had the exact same thing happen to him in Carolina, and sometimes that just happens. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for the Buffalo Bills, but also because Joe Brady, I think, is a darn good OC himself. Like, he's a good offensive mind. You're not going to like take a step backwards in that regard, I don't think.
Seeing the reporting come out today about how Sean McDermott wants the offense to generate a subculture within its culture that's like, I think he said, like, focused and dialed in. Maybe there was a looseness with how Dorsey coordinated the offense, and maybe, I know I'm making assumptions based off just that reporting, but maybe an overemphasis on alignment assignment and less of an emphasis on the vibe and what he wanted the culture of the offensive players to be. And you know, he moves on from whatever. My only problem with it is I don't think it happens if they win that game. And I think when you make decisions, like that, it's bad process, because that game's won if you have fucking 11 players on the field when they kick that first field goal. Making decisions off of losses like that, I think, is dumb. And people are like, they're not panicking or whatever. Leslie Frazier left last year. Now Ken Dorsey's out. Sean McDermott, if he's not panicking, he's reacting, right? And being reactionary in this league when wins are very volatile, and their last, I think now 6 or 7 games have been one-score wins or losses the last few way. Like, that's how this game is. The bigger problem, in my opinion, in that game was calling that 3rd and 10, cover 0 blitz when they were already out of field goal range, putting your DB in a position where you could throw up a Hail Mary ball like that and potentially get yourself in a situation where you're getting that defense pass interference. And then how the hell do you have 12 players on the field in that field? Those are the bigger problems for me. The slow starts and stuff, I wrote about this for the ringer.com. Like, they have been getting out to slow starts and they've been dialed in down the stretch. Maybe that's some of the subculture that they're trying to generate with this move. All in all, I just feel like whether you think Kevin Dorsey's a good play caller, a mid play caller, or a bad play caller, doing it reactionarily like this, I think, is bad process. Yeah,
it's like it seems like the move before the move, in that the second move is you lose your job. You know?
Yeah.
It's all too often this kind of play.
Playoffs.
Yeah.
Because if they miss the playoffs and then they go to the pool of offensive coordinators looking for head coaching jobs, they're going to be in an attractive spot. Very attractive spot.
Yeah.
Because any Ben Johnson, Shane Waldron, any of these guys that's looking to, or maybe even Bobby Slowick, or guy for PFF, any of these guys looking for interviews at the head coaching spot, they see Josh Allen's opening up. They're like, yeah, let me get a little swing of this bat. I can get involved. I can see what's going on here. So the Bills do have that opportunity. We'll see what ends up happening.
Very interested to see. I think they right the ship, honestly. I don't think they miss the playoffs. We'll see, though. Well, thanks, brother, for joining, as you do every Thursday. We'll talk to you again next week. Always fun talking with AG. I know we went a little out of order there. Some scheduling conflicts. This made more sense. So we are doing interior offensive linemen tomorrow. Top 5 of that. Make sure to check that one out. And then Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus joins on Friday to rank this running back class. And he texted me today saying there's a guy he's unreasonably high on in this class. I can't wait to find out. I didn't even push him. I just said, I want to find out on the show. So we'll all find out together. Until then, take it easy.